what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and I am here to show you my October TBR. So I'm filming this very early in September, actually. It is currently September 18th, and the reason I am filming this so early is because by this time I have completed my entire D&D TBR, and I've actually also completed the requirements for the Magical Readathon. I didn't finish all the prompts as of yet. I am still working through my September TBR, but I did read the 2 prompts that essentially are going to continue my journey in the Magical Readathon of Aurelium, because the requirement for that readathon was that you just had to read 2 books that met 2 prompts. So that's completed, and I still have like the rest of my TBR to go through. I'm not quite done with my Bookopoly TBR, which is pretty much the one I'm finishing, and then I'm just basically also trying to read the rest of the books I had set up for Magical Readathon, but it's going pretty well so far. I'm getting to the end of it. I've got probably about 5 books left, so I should be able to get my TBR done by the end of the month, and then maybe even be able to read a little bit more. I'm not 100% certain if one of the things I have planned for October I'm going to get through earlier in September than I think, but considering how this TBR for September has been going, I think it's very possible I could knock off basically an entire manga series by the end of the month and not have to put it on my October TBR, but we will see, and I'll still put it on here just because I have no idea whether I'm going to get to it or not in the next 12 days. But today we're going to go over my October TBR, which I'm going to try my best to get to be very spooky filled. I do have a couple of series I would like to start, and that is also including my Stephen King reading series and my reread series of Vampire Academy. So those books are still going to be somewhere involved in this, but because I completed my entire D&D TBR for September, I do get to pick one less book. So I basically have gone down from 5 prompts to now 3 prompts, because if you guys are not aware of how my D20 TBR thing goes, is basically I will set so many books up for prompts, and if I can complete all of those prompts in the month, then I get to pick one less prompt for the next month. And then I don't think I ever mentioned this, but if I can get down to where I finish like all of the prompts, like I get to a month where I have only 1 prompt and I complete that month with that 1 prompt, I then get to do something special. I'm not exactly sure what. I don't think I want to necessarily buy a bunch of books, because currently I don't really have the space for a lot of it, even though I've been very stupidly buying a bunch of books. But I feel like I need to do something where maybe it is just a complete mood read where I just pick something up randomly. I'm not 100% sure, so leave some suggestions that don't involve buying books down in the comments below, because I am kind of stumped for prizes for myself, because I'm getting to the point where by the end of the year I should be able to reward myself if I'm able to keep reading the prompts like I should. So anyway, that being said, I'm going to get into the wheel spins for this month. So let's see what we end up getting for October and where I can get my spooky books in. All right, so we are going to now do our first spin for October, which is going to be a backlist book. So this is anything that basically has been out for a while, that has kind of been on my TBR for quite some time. And I've got a couple of books I could put with this, and honestly, there is nothing that I currently have that is super new except for 1 book. There is 1 book on here that is like brand spanking new, so I have a plethora to choose from, which I'm very excited for. So let's go into spin number 2. Which is a rant. Okay, so this one I have to basically pick a book that I have to then do some kind of a rant review of, whether it's a rant about how much I love it or a rant review about how much I hate it. So this again can extend to anything I currently have. It's probably going to be something that is going to be like a reading vlog review, which technically counts as part of my ranting. So I think I may put one of my Stephen King books in this one, and then pick something else that I will likely have a lot of thoughts to say on. And I have a very specific one for this that I've been meaning to start for a while that I think is going to be perfect for this. So let's now do spin number 3, the final spin for October. And we have a hated trope. So this is basically something that is like a trope I don't like. Now, I have a few tropes I don't care for. I wouldn't necessarily say hate, but there's specific ones I can think of that could play into the some of the books I have here currently for some of my spooky books. So I'm actually pretty interested to see how this goes. So let's figure out what's going to be going head to head for each of these prompts. Okay, so for the first trope, which is the backlist trope, I have Tomi by Junji Ito, which is a book I've been meaning to get to for a while. I just recently got this and another book by Junji Ito because they're a horror author I've been really interested in getting into, and I've heard a lot of people say is really, really good and perfect for Halloween time. Pitted against Frostbite by Rochelle Mead. This is the second book in the Vampire Academy series. If you guys have been following me, I've been doing a reread / finish series of Vampire Academy, and I would really like to get this one on the TBR just because it is one of the ones I've already planning on reading for that series. But let's see what the D20 has in store for us today. We have a 9, so that means that Tomi is going to end up being the pick for the backlist piece. And I will, like I said, still be reading Frostbite. This is just a requirement that I have to have in order to take down my TBR for next month. Okay, next up we have the book for the rant / excited review, whatever it ends up being. Basically, I just have to make a review video for one of these books. We have New Spring by Robert Jordan. This is the prequel to the Wheel of Time series. I figured I'd start off with reading the Wheel of Time with the prequel just because I want to get a good understanding of the world and how it's set up before starting officially the Wheel of Time series. I did listen to the first book, The Wheel of Time, about a year ago on audio, and I just was very lost throughout it, so I figured maybe reading the physical books would be a better option, but I figured starting off with New Spring would be a good start as well. Versus the final book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, The Dark Tower. This is a bit of a chunker, but again, is one of the books I already am planning on reading in October, and is just something that would be great to have 2 birds with 1 stone kind of thing. So, let's see what we end up getting. And it is a 4, so that means that New Spring is also going to go on the TBR, this time for the rant. So you will be seeing a review of this, whether it is a rant review for how much I hated it, or just any kind of review. There will be one on the channel in October for this book, so do expect that at some point. And finally, we have the hated trope prompt. So this one, I picked 2 books that, while I actually am ready to read them or continue with the series or whatever, they're books that are like either not necessarily something that is as great as I thought it was, or is something that I just think is a little cheesy. So basically with The Merciless by Danielle Vega, I remember reading the first 2 books and really liking them a lot, but they are very cheesy horror stories, I think, and sometimes the violence was a little gratuitous, but I never finished the series, and I would like to actually read them because this is the perfect time of year for The Merciless. Pitted against that, though, is Snot Girl Volume 3, which is the newest volume that was released, I think, sometime last year, and I didn't care for the first 2 volumes of this. They're not bad by any means, but I feel like the story is not super streamlined, and honestly, I just kind of want to finish the series and then be done with it. I don't know whether I'll keep them. I might, because I do like the character of Snot Girl, but this also has a lot of petty drama within it that I'm not a fan of, so I don't know. I may keep them, I might not, I don't really know, but I guess we'll see. So, which one am I going to have to make as a requirement for this month? And that is a 15. So, looks like I'm going to be finishing off Snot Girl this month for sure. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if I'll keep the series. I don't know if I'm just going to hold on to them for shits and giggles, or if I'm just going to get rid of them. I have honestly no idea, but I think it's going to depend on how this one goes, because in general, they're pretty fun in terms of it being a graphic novel, and, you know, it's kind of just funny to see some of the things that they get into. There's like a whole murder mystery that's kind of a major subplot within it, and it's just a lot of gratuitous drama in general, so I'm not really sure whether I'm going to keep it, but it will be read in October. Okay, so let's go back over again the books that I will be reading for this month. So first, for the backlist prompt, we ended up going with Tomi by Junji Ito. This is a fairly anticipated release for me as it is, because I just know that it's been around for a while and a lot of people really like Junji Ito because of the horror that is involved with it. It is quite chunky, but this is basically like a manga, graphic novel, something like that, so I think I should enjoy it, but I'm a little scared because I have heard that the depictions of the horror is very body-filled and it's a little scary at times, but this would be perfect for Halloween nonetheless. And for the rant slash basically review prompt, I ended up having to go with New Spring by Robert Jordan, the prequel story to the Wheel of Time series. This also specifically was because the Wheel of Time TV show is going to be coming out on Amazon pretty soon, and my husband and I were actually fairly interested in it, and I have the entirety of the Wheel of Time series currently here at this house, and so I've been meaning to get through the series, and I kind of needed a reason to start it, so perfect reason to start would be, you know, for Halloween. Because while Halloween is basically like a spooky, scary kind of time, I also really like reading fantasy in the fall for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's because it just feels so magical, and I like to bring in a lot of that magic during the Halloween time, and it just makes me feel kind of warm and fuzzy a lot of times. And I'm hoping that because this one's also fairly short, it's going to be pretty quick, and hopefully it'll get me really enticed to want to continue with the Wheel of Time and make it a little bit more enjoyable than the first time I read it. And finally, for the hated trope prompt, we ended up going with Snot Girl Volume 3. Again, fairly short, so this is going to be pretty nice. It's going to make this TBR a lot easier in terms of the requirements, but again, I don't really know whether this is going to be good or not, mostly because I have not liked the first two. I gave them both 3 stars, but honestly, I don't know whether or not I'm going to keep this graphic novel series. I feel like I want to, just because I hear so many people say like it's a staple for them when it comes to graphic novels. And who knows, maybe I'll reread them and like them a lot more like in the future, but I'm a little unsure of what to do exactly with this because for one, they're in really good condition, and two, you know, it's possible that with more story that comes out, it's going to get better. If this is getting continued, I don't know. So I guess we'll see. Okay, so let's go over the other books I have for this month. So, as I told you guys, I do have my Stephen King reading series also continuing, which basically is going to have me required, essentially, in a sense, to read the final book in the Dark Tower series, which is The Dark Tower. I'm so excited for this, but I'm also kind of terrified because of the way that the story's gone. And this is a giant book. I think this may be the bigger book. It's not quite the same as Wizard and Glass, but it's pretty long. It's 843 pages, 845 pages of book, and mostly what I do with these is I listen to the audiobook as I'm working and kind of track my progress in the book, but I mark down the pages of the book because I have the physical copy, and I like to listen to the audiobook as I read the physical copy just because I feel like it gets me more involved in the world. So this shouldn't be really too hard. It's just that I'm a little scared of how this whole thing is going to end because I have a very distinct feeling that this is not going to be an easy ride. It has not been an easy ride as of yet because I'm currently, as filming this, reading Song of Susanna, and it's already going to shit, and I'm just terrified for how this series is going to end. But again, because I really like reading fantasy in the fall specifically, it's like the perfect time to finish up this series, and it's been long awaited. I've spent the majority of 2021 working on this series, and as bittersweet as it is, I am excited to finally have this done and be able to say that I've read the entirety of the Dark Tower series, and I understand why people love this series so much, because I have really enjoyed the entire ride of reading them. And then, like I said, also I am doing my reread slash finish series of Vampire Academy, which means I will be reading Frostbite in that series, which is book 2. This was the book that I remember reading and then stopping reading the series. Like, I read the entirety of this, bawled my eyes out at the end of it, and then I just never ended up picking up the rest of the books. So I was really surprised with how Vampire Academy went, which you can go check out my review for that in the description and in a card up above. So I'm gonna be fairly surprised if I don't like this one as much, because I felt like that going into this series I wasn't gonna really like a lot of Vampire Academy, but based on how the first book went, I have very high hopes for how Frostbite and the rest of the books in this series are going to go. Now that those are done, there are plenty of other books I would like to get to. Some of them are continuing a series that I kind of had started in this month, but Others are just other spooky, scary books that I would be interested in reading. So I'm going to go through them alphabetically, mostly because that's a little bit easier for me because I have them kind of in alphabetical order. So I guess let's just get started. The first one being the Silver Screen Inked in Blood graphic novel that is basically a graphic novel of the story of the band Ice Nine Kills' album. So if you're not familiar with the band Ice Nine Kills, they're basically a band that takes a lot of inspiration from horror and they create music almost kind of surrounding around those ideas. They've done that for the Michael Myers movies, they've done that for Pennywise from the book It by Stephen King, and various other horror stories that are very, very popular in contemporary culture. And essentially what they've done is the inspiration for those songs then created the inspiration for an overarching story that is portrayed within their music videos for those songs. And this graphic novel is basically supposed to be something that is, you know, involved in that. And this was also something that I bought at a convention. I went to a convention called Astronomicon several weeks ago with my husband and one of our best friends, and I actually got to meet the lead singer of Ice Nine Kills. He was so nice, and he actually signed and personalized the inside of it for me, where he says, "To Gabby, death is only the beginning." And it has his autograph down at the bottom. I was so happy because it was really funny too, because that quote right here is also a major quote from The Mummy, which I don't know if that was intentional, but that is one of my most favorite movies of all time, and it is a horror kind of movie too. So I was really excited, and honestly, I've just been chomping at the bit, finding a reason to read this, and this is like the perfect time of year, I think, to read this because it's freaking Halloween. They talk a lot about Halloween and scary shit, and Ice Nine Kills is like one of the bands that go hardcore when it comes to Halloween, so I'm very excited to be able to pick this up, and it will probably be on my higher priority list. Next is a very special series that I actually have been wanting to get into, mostly because it deals with a movie that I grew up with, along with several other people that grew up in like the 90s and early 2000s, and that is the Practical Magic series by Alice Hoffman. Now, if you've heard of the movie Practical Magic, many of people don't know that it was actually based off of a book. It is an adaptation of a series, the book being Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. What most people also don't know is that there are multiple books in this series, and I have not just the very first book, but the two prequel books that were written, and there is supposed to be a sequel to Practical Magic coming out in October that I'm very excited for. It comes out, I think, on October 5th, and this basically is, if you're not aware of what Practical Magic's about, it follows this family that are the Owens family, and they are a descending family from witches, the first witch being Maria Owens. And in Practical Magic, the movie and the book, you learn that the family has a curse. The women of the Owens family are cursed with the fact that they are never to really have a true love, because the men that they get themselves involved with will be doomed to die. I do know, though, that the movie deters very, very far from the book. There are a lot of things that are in the book that are not brought up in the movie, and there's a whole plot line that's brought up that is not also really involved in the book as it is in the movie, but this book basically takes place 200 years after the curse has been placed on the family. Now, the other two books that are involved in this, the first one being The Rules of Magic, follows the main character's aunts. So Aunt Jet and Aunt Frances, this follows their story, and apparently, according to my mother, who has read this, you follow a lot of information about the aunts, and not only them, but a brother that they have, as well as the main character in Practical Magic, Sally and Jilly's mother. So there's a lot of history involved in this. Then you get to Magic Lessons, which is the prequel to the prequel, and this essentially is following the story of Maria Owens, the woman who placed the curse on the Owens women. So this is going to be a very fun series if I'm able to get to it, and obviously Practical Magic is going to be one of the movies I will be probably watching on loop over the course of the next couple of months, so this is going to be very exciting. And then, like I said, I will be reading the sequel to Practical Magic, which comes out in October, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but I will put a picture up here for you guys to check it out and leave the information for it down in the description. I'm just so jazzed to be able to pick this series up hopefully in October. I think it's going to be a really good reading month. And while this isn't necessarily a requirement, I just would really like to be able to get to this, considering I have quite a few short books involved in here. So I guess we'll see kind of how that goes. Next, I have Junji Ito's other book that I had picked up, which is Smashed. Now, this is specifically a collection of short stories, if I'm not mistaken. It's 13 Chilling Nightmares presented by the Master of Horror. So again, more of a graphic novel style. Pretty excited about this again, and a little scared because just from that cover art, that's a little scary. So I'm interested to see how I like Junji Ito's writing, considering I will be reading 2 of his books hopefully in October. So the next series I'm going to talk about is one that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pick up in October, because it depends on if I'm able to pick it up at the end of September, considering that I'm going to have a lot of wiggle room if I can get the rest of my books I had planned for September read. And that is volumes 2 through 8 of Bleach by Tite Kubo. I only have the first 8 volumes of this series, but I am really excited for this because I loved the first one, which I read at the end of August, and I've since finishing that have been really wanting to read more of the series because I think it would be so much fun. And this I thought fit really well with Halloween because of the fact that the story follows a guy who becomes basically a soul reaper, so you're dealing a lot with ghosts and spirits and that kind of stuff, so I thought that worked out really well. I just really love this, and the first one flew by so quick for me because it's just a manga series that I think I'm going to end up loving reading the rest of these. But again, this depends on if I can read it at the end of September, so whether this actually gets picked up in October, I don't know. It's just going to depend, I guess. Next is a very highly anticipated read and is a brand new release, and that is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I have been chomping at the bit for this book since I heard it was coming out, and I just picked this up literally today as I'm filming this, and I'm so excited. Again, this is a very chunky book. This is, I think, going to be almost 900 pages, if not more than that, maybe? No, it's actually not quite as big as I thought, but that's okay. It is apparently 734 pages, and oh, I'm so excited because I really liked Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I only read the first book, but I really, really liked it, and I love his Illuminae series that he does with Amy Kaufman. So I have a distinct feeling that I'm going to really enjoy Empire of the Vampire, and I know everybody is going to be putting this on their October TBR as well because it's gothic horror vampires. It is the perfect read for October. So this one I think will be a little bit on my higher priority list in terms of my reading, but I am really excited to see what I think of this by the end of the month if I can get to it. Next is another graphic novel. I have a lot of graphic novels on this list because I have several that I've started in the last couple of months, but this next one is Twisted's Haunted Highons by Manning Pescata and Fornassari. I think those are the artists of this. Anyway, this is a graphic novel series, comic book series, I guess, that was created by the band Twisted, similar to kind of how the Ice Nine Kills does Inked in Blood. Basically, this is a comic book series that follows the 2 main guys from the band Twisted. They're their own main characters, and they go on ghost adventures. So this is, like, absolutely perfect. I really liked the first one. I got to watch a video adaptation of the comic book, and it was very, very fun. So I think I'm going to really enjoy these ghost adventure kinds of things, and I just like the guys from Twisted. Their humor is really funny to me, and they're always a good time. So this one is not autographed, though, unfortunately, but I do have the pamphlet from when I went to Astronomicon, because I picked this up while I was at Astronomicon as well. So yeah, very excited to pick this one up just because I think it's going to be a fun ride. Next series is the Descender series, volumes 2 through 6 by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. I read the first one here just recently in September. Like, I just read it yesterday, and I really liked the first one. I think I gave it a 4-star, so I was really wanting to pick this one up. This is more sci-fi than fantasy, but this deals with a young android, basically, who, after being asleep for 10 years, finds out that, like, all androids and robots and machines are basically being scrapped because there was a lot of thought in terms of the fact that they had brought devastation to the different planets that humans had inhabited, because there was a massive catastrophe where many human lives were lost, and this young android is, like, one of the only ones that are basically left. And so the people are trying to find him, and you find out at the end of the first one that somebody very specific was looking for him, that nobody knows why. And it's some kind of like band of robots basically that everyone thought were dead. So I'm curious to see how the rest of this series goes, but because it's not necessarily creepy, but it was really interesting enough to where I wanted to kind of binge read the rest of the series if I could. And then on top of that, I have the sequel series that was created after Descender, which is called Ascender. There's only 3 volumes of this currently, but this takes place, I think, 10 years after the events of Descender. So I would like to read all of these if I can also in October, because I just really liked the first one, and I want to try to finish more graphic novel series before I start other ones, just like I want to finish some series before I start others, because of the fact that I just have so many that I want to get to, but I gotta read through the ones that I start first, kind of thing. I would like to try to read the other volumes in this world before moving on to another one, and I'm kind of excited for how this one's gonna go, even though it's sci-fi and not really fantasy. So I guess we'll see how it goes. That's all the graphic novels I have, by the way, but the last series I want to try and read in this month is the Merciless series by Daniel Vega. So I have, like I said, wanted to finish this series for a while. I read the first 2 a few years ago and I liked them. They are a little bit on the cheesy side when it comes to horror. There's a little bit of a gratuitous violence within it, but the overall idea is the Merciless, you follow a young girl who moves to kind of more of a Catholic school, and she gets involved with this very kind of different group. Think of like how The Craft, the movie, is. It's kind of got that similar vibe to it. And they find out that one of the girls that they go to school with could possibly be possessed by the devil, and so they decide to try to perform an exorcism, and things go very bad very, very quickly, and that storyline basically continues over the course of these 4 books. The second one takes place several months, I think, after the events of the first book, but things come back to haunt the main character in very disastrous ways, and I'm pretty sure that books 3 and 4 are just continuing that disastrous outcome from the first book. So again, I really like Daniel Vega's writing. I actually will, hopefully by the time I get to these, have read her other 2 books that she wrote, which are The Haunted and The Unleashed, which I heard were really good. So I'm really excited to see how this reread / finishing series goes. I wasn't planning on originally starting this so soon because I am working through, like I said, Vampire Academy, but I thought that with Halloween coming up, maybe it would be a good idea to get this out of the way as soon as possible, just because I do want to reread the first 2 and then finish the series. So I may be doing videos for these as well in the month of October. I don't know for sure, but I guess I'll come to that decision when I get to it. That's even if I can get to these, because at this point these are kind of bottom of the barrel, only because they are books I wanted to do for a specific reread series already. So this might be kind of on the more lower priority of my month. So I am not even going to try to attempt to pick up all the books that I just showed you guys, because it is a ton and they are going to be very heavy. So you can imagine, though, all of the books that I have set for this month. So again, the only 3 real requirements are the ones for my D20 TBR, but I have so many others that I would like to read, and then I do have my Stephen King reading series and my Vampire Academy reread. So technically 5 books are really only the requirement for this month, but I have so many I want to read for various reasons that are just gonna fit the theme of October so well. And since a lot of them are graphic novels, I think it's entirely possible I could get through at least half of the books that I have, mostly because I think half of them are graphic novels at this point, but I'm not even going to try to attempt to figure out the total number of pages that I will hopefully read. October is just one of my most favorite months of the year. It always has been. There's been so many good memories associated with Halloween for me, and I just love being able to rewatch some of my favorite movies that are around Halloween time. It's just going to be, I think, a really good month because it's going to involve a lot of good things, and why not extend that to my reading? So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this TBR. If you guys would like to share your guys' TBRs, please feel free to down in the comments below. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.